Here we are in early September on a lovely day, but the season's running out and it's time to start thinking ahead. And where I'm standing, I've actually removed first early and second early potatoes, and the ground is lying clear and empty. And it potentially could stay that way until next March or April, when I'll be sowing peas and beans. And it seems a wasted opportunity not to cover the ground with some vegetation that'll do some good in the meantime. I'm going to sow a cover crop or green manure, and it will be a valuable resource to improve the fertility of my garden without having to buy expensive fertilizers or manures. Sowing green manure or cover crop seeds is very simple. All you do is you sprinkle it thickly on the ground, you rake it in, you tread it in, and that's all there is to it. There's lots of very good cover crop and green manures sold by seed merchants, but they tend to be expensive, whereas bird seed from the supermarket is £1 a kilo, and it's equally effective and a very cheap option. So it's no surprise, being the man that I am, which one I'm going to sow today. All I'm doing is spreading this wild bird seed thickly on the ground. I'm going to sow it nice and thick so there's no room for weeds. When the seed is as cheap as this, you can afford to sow it densely and squeeze the weeds out. The reason for green manures, a number of reasons. One is that the nutrients left over from the potato crop will be washed out in the winter if they weren't picked up by the roots of the green manure. And that's nitrogen and potassium, and they're quite expensive. And it's a pity for them to be washed out, where they may cause pollution in this river valley near the Thames. So the cover crop is doing ecological good by preventing pollution. It's saving me money by mopping up nutrients. Also, research has shown that a cover crop actually benefits wildlife. They've got somewhere to shelter, and the roots and the root exudates of the cover crop improve the ecology of the soil and also add a little bit of organic matter. So next year, when my peas and beans are growing here, there'll be nutrients being released by the rotting wheat, and that will mean I don't have to use any fertilizer, and also the soil will be improved and the structure made better by the roots. The next step is to rake the seeds into the soil, mix it in, not too deeply, not too shallow. But before you go out and buy your seeds, choose ones that are suited to the soil. So cereals like wheat and oats and rye are good for any soil really. For clay soil, something that dies over winter, like phacelia and sunflowers, is a good choice. Leaves the clay uncovered come spring so it can dry off quite quickly, ready for sowing. Sandy soils like this, it's quite feasible to have things that grow all winter. So I like Italian ryegrass in particular, especially for late sowing, and that forms a thick mat of grass come April, which is very hard to destroy, so you have to be quite careful on that. And if you're going to leave a green manure in for longer, into next summer say, consider leguminous ones like clovers and vetches and beans. They need warmth and sunlight to fix nitrogen in any sense, so ideally use those as not going to be terminated until June or July. The next stage is to tread the soil, pushing the seed and the soil close together. The seed needs to absorb moisture, and if you leave the soil loose, it'll dry up and the seed will do what's called malting, where it'll sprout and then die through lack of moisture. But by treading it, it's in close contact and the seed will grow away and send down roots to get at moisture lower in the soil. There's no danger of compaction at this time of year in most cases. If the soil's wet, treading is unwise, but at this time of year, soils are at their very driest. If you're sowing in spring or in winter or in early autumn, then the soil can be wet, and then you just leave it raked and let the rain compress the soil. Rain is forecast in a week's time. So by the time the wheat is germinated and coming up, the rain will be here and it'll grow away very fast. Well, that's the seed in contact with the warm, moist soil. It should be up in a week or two. Now I'm going to rake it over. Raking isn't particularly essential. It'd be fine without raking, but I quite like the raking because it looks prettier. And hopefully it'll grow on all over winter, doing good, and then come spring it has to be terminated. I usually mow it and then just hoe off strips, or I'm going to sow seeds, in this case peas or beans, and leave the other stuff to grow on and terminate that later in the spring when it's put on plenty of biomass. No dig gardeners can cover it with cardboard and mulch to kill it. Start in February, it'll be ready to plant or sow in April. And if you're going to dig the cover crop in, which is perfectly feasible, leave it a couple of weeks for the ground to settle, and for any products of decomposition as the grass and the wheat rots to disperse so they won't harm the roots or impair the germination of seeds. And there you have it. Cover crops are great for improving your soil, making your garden healthier, helping out your garden wildlife, and that's all there is to it. And it doesn't cost very much, and it's not very technically demanding, I hope. So I wish you every success with your cover crops.